What does it mean for integers to be consecutive? We just talked about that. Consecutive integers would be 1, 2, 3. Could be -5, -4, -3. As long as they are consecutive, those are called consecutive integers. We can use some algebraic notation to represent a general consecutive integer type setup. Meaning this. Let me write these horizontal. If I have 1, 2, and 3. Sorry, let me write those vertical. If I have my consecutive integers as 1, 2, and 3. If I allowed my first term to be n, how could I show my next consecutive integer? What would I have to do to 1 to make it 2? Add 1 to it. So my next consecutive integer could be shown as n plus 1. What would I have to do to get from 1 to 3 to show my consecutive integers? I've already done the plus 1 here. Plus 2. So the algebraic representation for that would be n plus 2. And then if I wanted the next consecutive integer, it'd be n plus 3, n plus 4, so on and so forth. This notation right here, this algebraic notation, is how we can show 3 consecutive integers for a general situation. Yes? What? It would work on that one, but if it was 72, then it'd have to be 72 plus 1, 72 plus 2. All right, so that may not have been the perfect one to use there. But anyway, okay, somebody else have a question? Yes?
Do you have, like you did the plus 1 and then the n plus 1, if you want to get from 1 to 3, do you have to do that step, the n plus 1 step? Or can you just go down to the 2?
That's a different lesson, kind of. Just watch what's going on here. Don't get too caught up in that. What I want you to know and remember and use is the fact that if you're asked to find consecutive integers, you're going to use n plus 1, n plus 2, n plus 3, n plus 4, depending on how many they're asking for. Okay? This problem says find 3 consecutive integers. So the 3 consecutive integers are going to be n plus 1, and n plus 2. Those are representing our 3 integers. If it had said 4 consecutive integers, then I would throw on n plus 3 also. Here's where we get into some of the math stuff that where 3 times the sum of this number plus this equals that type of thing comes into play. Find 3 consecutive integers such that the sum, what is sum? Adding. So we're going to add the first number and the third. What's the first number? N. And the third is n plus 2. And we want to think of this as one value, so it needs to be in parentheses. Is means equals 146. Since I have a plus sign in front of that parentheses, do I need the parentheses on that? No. So I'm going to just get rid of that and that. Now simplify. N plus n, 2n. Plus 2 equals 146. And we're just solving then at this point. Subtract 2. 2n equals 144. N equals 72. Am I finished? Not quite, because it said to find 3 consecutive. So my first one is 72. My next one would be 73 and, whoops, 74. This is your answer right there. 72, 73, 74. Yes, ma'am?
And what's the last image you just did when you put 73 and 74?
I took my value for n that I found. That's my first consecutive integer. And so that's n. So then 72 plus 1 is 73. 72 plus 2 is 74. I'm just finding the next consecutive integer. You don't even have to actually do the math side of that. You just know if your first one's 72, your next one has to be 73 and 74.
Alright.
Yes?
So, every time you do problem we have to write down the n plus 1, n plus 2 every time.
Yes.
And then
So you have that written down in your mind. You can see it to then put it into the word problem how it's set up.
then what about like the n plus 2?
Over here, this was my out of my 3 integers, Kelly, this is the first one, second, and third. And in the problem it said the sum of the first and third, the first one is n, the third one is n plus 2.
So you have to put n plus.
And that's why I had that in parentheses at first. And then I said we have that plus sign, so it doesn't matter if I have the parentheses or
Did you
not.
have 1 after n
That was a parentheses. We're going to do a few more of these so you can get a chance to watch them. Find 3 consecutive integers such that twice the sum. Let's get our consecutive integers written down. N plus 1, n plus 2. All right, such that twice the sum of the first 2. So we're going to take 2 times our sum. That means we're taking 2 and adding or taking it times the sum. And the sum is of the first 2. The first 2 are n and n plus 1. Again, this is a plus. It said sum, so I'm not going to put the parentheses around. If it was a minus, then I'd have to distribute that, and that would change it. But since it's a plus, I don't have to do that. So I'm just going to write it as n plus 1. I will. Yes. Is means equals. Do some moving here. Group. Try it again. We'll just do it this way then. Just going to move this down to give us a little bit of room for my is. So is, what have I asked you to do when you see 2 less than right after the is part?
Put a minus in after the space.
Cover it up.
Yeah.
Hide it. Don't look at it until we get to the end. So I'm going to ignore that. 3 times the third. So I need 3 times. My third number in my sequence is n plus 2. And then I go back 2 less than, and I put the minus 2 on the end. Uh-huh.
I get how you found the second part of the equation after the equal sign, but how did you find the first part? It's not really adding up.
Not getting the sum of things?
Oh. Math puns are horrible.
Yes. All right. You're the one that said it's not adding up to me, so that's where I went with it. Okay. Going back to it. Such that twice means 2 times.
Yeah.
2 times a sum. So I put the 2 times a set of parentheses, and inside that parentheses I'm going to write the sum that it's asking for. The sum was of the first 2. This is your first one. This is your second one. So n plus 1.
Is there like a special name for those? So we don't
Consecutive
find
integers.
out? That's all they're called?
This type of problem is a consecutive integer problem.
Okay.
Right? And when you see this, find 3 consecutive integers.
Alright.
This is one of those where if you asked me, and you're not, but I'm sure you're thinking it, when would we use this in life? This type of thing specifically isn't something that you probably are going to use in life. But the idea of organizing some data and getting it put in the right spots and then solving, that part is. Okay, that's a everyday problem solving, figuring out how you're going to get certain things done, and the order that you're going to do them. And so we're just creating a thinking process here, not necessarily that you'll be able to do this when you're a 28-year-old and impress your boyfriend or whatever thing. So now that you have this, then you do the algebra with it. And I'm going to work upwards on this one. It'll be a little bit weird. 2, inside we have 2n plus 1 now. Just adding those two together. I'm going to go ahead and distribute. That's 3n plus 6 minus 2. Going to just keep going up again since I have more space that way. Distribute the 2 on this side. 4n plus 2. And then add my like terms over here. 3n plus 4. All right, subtract 3n from both sides. Subtract 2 from both sides. That's just plain old algebra stuff. And we have n equals 2. You could subtract 4n from both sides, and then you just subtract 4, and you'd have negative n equals negative 2. And you asked me if you could subtract 4 from both sides, right?
Isn't this like an everyday problem?
Yes. Did you ask me if I subtract 4 from both sides? So if you subtracted 4 from this side, then we would want to move the 4n to the other side. Don't get caught up in the algebra. Yes, you could. You'd be able to solve it fine. It'd work out the same. Okay? So if n is equal to 2, then you have 3 and 4. So 2, 3, 4 are your consecutive integers such that twice the sum of the first two is 2 less than the third, or 3 times the third.
Is 2, 3, 4 our whole answer? Do we have to
Yeah.
put the n equals and all that stuff?
2, 3, 4 is your answer. You're going to have this anyway, or you should. Some of you will get to where, well, I don't need to do that, and you just plug them in, and hopefully you get those right. But 2, 3, 4 is your answer.
I got like a negative. Like I worked it, but I did a little bit different. And I got a negative 1 n equals 2.
That's what I was trying to get at on this for you whenever you were asking about this. Okay, tell me again what you did with the 4. Did you subtract 4 from both sides?
Well, at first I did the I minus 2 on that side, minus 2 over here.
Okay.
I got 2, and then I took my 4 and minus it from my 3.
Okay, so here's what you have then. If you subtract 2 from both sides, and you subtract 4n from both sides, then you have 0 left on the left-hand side. And then you have a negative 1n plus 2. Then you got to get this moved back over. That makes it a positive n. So that's why you're looking at this and trying to say, well, it should be negative 2. But you got to get that back over to the other side.
And then you figure.
That's why I was getting hyper again saying, you can do that, but you have to subtract 4 from the other side, and you get that negative n equals negative 2. Find 4 consecutive integers. So that's n plus 1, n plus 2, n plus 3, such that 6 times the sum, so I'm going to take 6 times the sum of the first and fourth. The first is n, the fourth is n plus 3, is 26 less than, cover that up, 10 times the third, and then minus 26. Okay. Not even going to try. Then simplify here, so we have 6 times 2n plus 3 equals, I'm going to distribute the 10 through, 10n plus 20 minus 26. Continue my algebra, 12n plus 18 equals 10n minus 6. And then I'm going to subtract 10n from both sides because I'd rather have the positive n. So I'm going to subtract 10n, and then subtract 18. 2n equals negative 24, and n equals negative 12. So if n is negative 12, n plus 1 would be negative 11, because you're adding, so negative 10, negative 9. Sometimes it's a little easier if I'll just get through it and quit talking. So problem set 76, 1 through 30. Test Thursday. So this is due Friday.
Is it going to be time test?
This test is going to be timed, and I'll explain more about that once I shut this off.